The G77 and China Summit is underway in Havana, where leaders from the Global South get together in a historic occasion to discuss world-pressing issues and possible solutions. In Argentina, social organizations and left-wing parties marched against ultra-liberal presidential candidate Javier Milei. And North Korean leader Kim Jong-un on Friday toured the two aircraft plants as part of his Russia tour. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. Discussions at the Summit of Leaders and Heads of State of the G77 plus China Summit progresses in Havana with a focus of a united approach of the countries of the Global South. With the participation of more than 100 delegations from the member states of the bloc and officials from international organizations, the meeting will provide an opportunity for high-level debates and political and economic issues for developing nations. As part of the agenda, the participants are expected to follow up on the group's historic demands, particularly in relation to the new international economic order. At the ceremony, Cuban President Miguel Díaz-Canel proposed discussing the role of science and technology as essential components associated with development. In his opening speech at the summit of the Group of 27 and China, Cuban President Miguel Díaz-Canel referred to issues such as climate change and its consequences, the democratization of international relations among nations, and the poverty conditions of the southern peoples.
The peoples of the South are the ones that have more poverty, hunger, misery, death for curable diseases, illiteracy, human displacements, and other consequences of underdevelopment. Many of our nations are called poor when in fact they should be called impoverished nations. And we have to revert that condition in which we have been stuck as a result of colonial centuries of dependence, because the South can no longer cope with these unfortunate issues. Those who raise cities out of the blood and sweat of the nations of the South are suffering already, and they will suffer more in the future, the consequence of economic imbalances that were the result of plunder. We are traveling on the same boat, although some are VIP passengers and others are their servants.
Cuba's President Miguel Díaz-Canel referred to the patterns imposed by developed countries and the brain stealing they exercise on the South.
Another reality is a tendency to patent everything, including life forms, and this is a practice that swells the coffers of large transnational corporations in the most powerful economies and makes the remaining economies more fragile. The rampant process.
We go live to the summit for the Prime Minister of Guinea-Bissau, who's addressing the plenary.
Excellencies, representatives of international organizations, and other guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is with great satisfaction that I address this summit of heads of state and government of the G77 and China, dedicated to the topic of the role of science, technology, and innovation. From Guinea-Bissau, I bring a warm greeting on behalf of our people, His Excellency, the President of the Republic, and the government, which I have the honor to represent. On this occasion, we take the opportunity to address this topic, which could not be more appropriate. We gather here today in Havana, Cuba, in a summit focusing on science, technology, and innovation in a country that has always been present and contributed in the projection, knowledge, and training of men and women from all over the world. Cuba and Guinea-Bissau are two brotherly countries. This friendship comes from the struggles for national liberation, for the independence of Guinea-Bissau, led by the visionary leadership of Merkel Cabral, hero of our independence and founder of our nationality. Cuba, under the leadership of Fidel Castro, was one of the countries that most supported the struggle for national independence by sending internationalist Cubans into our country. After the independence, the friendship and cooperation between our two countries was even more strengthened. Through the actions of the Cuban people in the training of our cadres in areas such as health. And so I take this opportunity to once again thank the solidarity and friendship of the Cuban people towards the people of Guinea-Bissau. Ladies and gentlemen, since January this year, when Cuba took the presidency of the G77 and China, President Díaz-Canel Bermúdez called us to this summit, in which we intend to speak of a key topic that concerns us all. The risks and uncertainty of a more and more symmetric world in terms of equality and justice call us to take a deeper look into the future, advocating for unity. We do not have a favorable framework. It has been almost a decade since the adoption of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and the Action Plan of Addis Ababa. However, all the progress individually recorded have been insufficient for those in order to face current challenges. The IMF points at 1/3 of global economy will be in recession in 2023, and for the first time we have seen that human development have been regressing in 9 of every 10 countries. The indebtedness of countries limits their developing countries limits their abilities to fulfill the sustainable development goals and increases the risk of food insecurity and lack of security in face of climate change. We have to remember that poverty is one of the main obstacles in the world. The most restrictive economic situations and the high level of the debt have a negative impact on low-income countries. We cannot forget the negative effects of climate change affecting the survival of developing countries, especially of those small island states. Ladies and gentlemen, science, technology, and innovation in diverse areas have seen unprecedented evolution. Those less developed countries cannot always benefit from those progress, especially in terms of improving their life conditions. Therefore, the topic of this summit is a very important one, because we must debate and respond to issues such as how can countries of the South benefit of those scientific and technological innovations of today's world? How can we promote South-South cooperation in this matter? which mechanisms can be implemented to promote greater South-South cooperation and North-South cooperation. This, among other issues, must be deeply analyzed, and the responses will no doubt be reflected in the final resolutions. However, I believe that it is South-South cooperation which must be our greatest work due to the technological and scientific and informational exchange, focusing on the different progresses of our countries or groups of countries that are part of this great group. Mr. President, in the 1960s, at the beginning of our organization, several revolutionary leaders of the world manifested in defense of the just causes of freedom, self-determination, development, and progress. It is an honor to see that this summit John Kenyatta, Fidel Castro, Patricio Lumumba, Leopold Sédar Senghor, Julius Nyerere, Nelson Mandela, among many other fighters whose actions justify our existence. Our responsibility is in having long ago defined a new economic international order. Now, it is more than ever evident that those transformations are essential and can no longer wait. Mr. President, the G77 and China are called on carrying out an important debate regarding financing of development, as well as demanding from developed countries true actions to fulfill their commitments, taking into account the reform of international economic structure, which is key for the transformation that we all long for. We need a stimulation to fulfill the goals for development for the most needed, for those countries that need it the most, and to provide better access to those countries by aligning the financial flows with those goals. Mr. President, these reasons we have just mentioned have been listed on several occasions, and most recently in Paris, where several voices were heard and claimed the urgency and political will to implement what is necessary to overcome the most complex crisis of modern history. Therefore, we must take our responsibility and unequivocally show our unity in the face of an decreasingly symmetrical world. We need promoters for the different changes that are necessary to ensure a sustainable future. To conclude, we take this opportunity to partner with other states and call for a lifting of the economic blockade that Cuba has been imposed for several decades, as well as the elimination for any barrier that could limit the development, the harmonious development of Cuba and every other country. Long live Cuba. Thank you very much for your attention.
Muchas gracias, excelentísimo señor Geraldo João Martins.
We will listen to the statements of the Prime Minister of Guinea-Bissau, Geraldo João Martins. The Prime Minister thanked once more Cuba's international solidarity. The high official also denounced the lack of current international institutions' ability to face the world's current challenges. João Martins called to create platforms to create better South-South cooperations as well as North-South cooperations.
In the last decades, their countries have brought many people out of poverty and the United Nations has been seeking global solutions and promoting solidarity. But now we are facing a number of world crises. Poverty is increasing. Hunger is greater. Prices have soared, and climatic disasters are increasingly more frequent. The systems and the global frameworks have failed. The conclusion is clear. The world is failing the developing countries.
Those were statements issued by UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres earlier on the conference. Also, he called on the bloc to promote science, technology, and innovation to further solidarity, solve common problems, and contribute to making the Sustainable Development Goals a reality.
Richer countries awarded COVID vaccines while the pandemic ran rampant in the global south. E quiero aprovechar este momento para felicitar.
And I would like to take this opportunity to congratulate Cuba for the successful development in the vaccines. Vaccines have been used not only in the people of Cuba, but also Cuba have been generous enough to use these vaccines in other peoples which were victims of inequality to international access to the vaccines.
The President of Comoros and Chairperson of the African Union, Azali Assoumani, stressed the importance of the summit for developing countries during his speech at the G77 and China Summit in Havana.
The summit in Havana is an opportunity for our developing countries to set the basis for a common reflection in order to protect our populations from the consequences of related to security, governance, and everything related to science and technology that are not yet controlled.
And in his speech at the opening session of the G77 and China Summit, Honorable Prime Minister and President of CELAC, Rafael Gonçalves from St. Vincent and the Grenadines, made reference to the topic of the summit, science, technology, and innovation.
Science, technology, and innovation are not a series of aggregated technical functions which are configured and maintained in science laboratories. They take place in the real world in a social and political economic laboratory. And like all important questions before us, it's about who gets what, when, where, and how. There is a view abroad that the struggle in today's world among competing powers is a struggle between democracies and autocracies.
Prime Minister Gonçalves also referred to the struggle for resources and to whom they belong, who controls them, and who distributes them.
This struggle is about resources, who owns them, who controls them, who distributes them. Every one of us who is wise and mature know this to be so. And when the subject matter arises, we have the big global powers tell us that there is they want a new world order. From the trenches of the periphery.
We return live to the summit's venue with our colleague Gladys Quesada, who has the latest on today's Paramount event. Hi, Gladys.
Hi, Luis. How are you?
We're doing okay here. What can you tell us of what has been going on in today's Paramount event at the Palacio de las Convenciones?
Well, so far, the speakers continue, the heads of state and also the Global South leaders continue to address the summit. And one of the latest developments and updates is that the summit is not gonna stop. It's going non-stop until the official dinner, this ceremony and private dinner that they are going to have late in the night, maybe at 8 p.m. the time of Havana. Because those many speakers, they have taken longer than expected, so they are going to have a non-stop session. So this is one of the latest updates. But let's go to one of the speakers of the afternoon, and that's the president of Colombia, Gustavo Petro. Petro was referring to climate crisis and also how the North, the global North, has had an impact on this and how the global South is the one hardest hit. But also Petro had other perspective. He said that capitalism and the neoliberalism cannot sustain life. It's not sustainable for human life, it's not sustainable for human growth and development, and also it's not sustainable for a future and the future that we all want. And that's one of the key roles of the global South, is to sustain life, is to find alternative models, and is to find also maybe strategies to cope with this effect and also to find a better future for the generations to come. Also, Petro was saying that capital kills. And that's one of the phrases of the day, that's one of the sentences of the day. Capital kills because of the unsustainable ways that capitalism is going over humankind and all the planet. Also, he said that G77 is one of the main models of negotiations, of renegotiations of capital, of strategies, of cultures, and other, also is one of the ways to find sustainable solutions. And Petro said that maybe Colombia is willing to join the G77 in the future, in the near future. Other of the speakers was the Prime Minister of Gabon, Raymond Gon-Zima, and he was referring to the financial war. That is other of the terms in this summit. The financial war, the financial violence that the worldwide powers are exerting with the dollar hegemony over the lesser advantaged or the less advantaged economies. In this case, the Prime Minister of Gabon was saying that the countries must find the capital and put the capital there where the growth and the development is sustainable, and also where the capital is going to be for the majorities and not the minorities of the world. Those are the main topics in these latest interventions, in the latest addresses, but we are going to keep on track on other speakers. Do you have any questions? Do you have any doubts? Do you want to comment on something?
Yes, Gladys, I've been listening to the statements. I've heard a lot of talk about South-South cooperations to emphasize this idea to be able to face the challenges that the world, that humanity is facing to have a better future.
Yeah, you know, South-South cooperation, that is one of the main topics of the summit. Let's recall something. South-South is the way that the countries of the global South, the underdeveloped countries, those in disadvantage in economy and politics and geopolitics also, can find a way to look for their potential and cooperate based on those potential. For example, Argentina is one of the South-South cooperation strategies is to find a better ways of doing agriculture and also the lithium exploitation. And those are the comparative advantages that the presidents have been talking about and that the program of the summit is contemplating and is pondering in this summit. Because the cooperative advantages are the ways that every country has something to give, but not in exchange of money. It's in exchange of other goods, other resources, and other ways to grow and to find the development. It's not an exchange of money. It's an exchange of growth and development. That is a premise of the Global South, and that is a premise of this summit of the G77 and China.
Thank you, Gladys, for your input. We're not going to stay in touch in upcoming news brief for the latest information coming from the Palacio de las Convenciones. We're going to continue now with other news.
I'm here in the briefing room of the summit, and I will give you all the details.
Thank you. We are continuing now with our news, and we go to Argentina, where social movements and left-wing parties march against the promotion of ultra-liberal Argentinian presidential candidate Javier Milei. On Thursday afternoon, thousands of people marched in downtown Buenos Aires city against the economic adjustment policies demanded by the International Monetary Fund and Milei's speeches against public health and education systems. The mobilization was held as part of a national day of struggle and had replicas in different cities of the country. Among other controversies, the libertarian Javier Milei received the highest number of votes in primary elections, and his speech promotes the elimination of central banking, dollarization, and the elimination of education and healthcare as universal rights guaranteed by the state. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un on Friday toured two aircraft plants in eastern Russia, accompanied by the Deputy Prime Minister and head of Russian industry and trade, Denis Menturov. Kim visited an industrial plant of the Komsomolsk-Amur aviation plant, where the assembly of Su-35 and Su-57 fighter jets is carried out. The North Korean leader was able to see the industrial facilities of another aerospace company, Yakovlev, where some parts of the fuselage and wing components of the SGA-100 commercial aircraft are manufactured. This is Kim's second visit to Russia, during the first in April 2019. He merely visited the city of Vladivostok and met with the Russian president on the campus of the Far Eastern Federal University. Like this, we have come to the end of this newspaper. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also join us on social media: Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For Telesur English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.